Hello, my biohacking bestie. It's been a long time since we had a solo episode, so I'm really excited to get this information to you. It's just my heart goes out to all the podcast hosts out there who do their solo episodes. I don't know about them, but for me it's quite the work. I want to make sure I say everything right, that I have references and yeah, it takes time to do this. It's not like just whipping it out. So anyways, I'm excited to talk to you today about body composition and how it changes in menopause, why, and what are my tips? What are the things that I'm doing that help me with my body composition? And these, of course, are things that I've used with my clients in the past as well, but everybody's different. So I'm excited to share with you this information. But before we get into what we're going to talk about, I just want to remind you to go to the YouTube channel if you ever want to see my guests in person. And it's fun, actually. I like seeing stuff on YouTube. So just go to Hack My Age. You can just search that. Everything on social media is Hack My Age. I'm on TikTok even. I'm on LinkedIn. It's just everywhere. And when you get a moment, please rate and review the show. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. I know it seems like nothing and probably going, oh yeah, I should do it. I should do it. Yes, just go and do it, please. I beg you, because this is the way we get more women to learn about what's going on in this menopause transition. I cannot imagine how many women I still meet every single day who have no idea what perimenopause is, and they're like deeply in it. So please go rate and review, 5-star, 10-star, 20-star, whatever it is that you can give, and a little review what you think. So that's a small gesture, but it really makes a huge impact. And if you've already done it, my gratitude, hashtag gratitude to you, because I know who you are and I read every single one of these reviews. And I want to thank you for that. And also a reminder to go to the hackmyage.com website. There are tons of information there. There's freebies, there's um, biohacking menopause downloadable master classes that are short and sweet. They're longer, more intense programs on hot flashes and getting your energy back. And while you're there, did you notice that there's a menopause quiz? If you haven't, go and take the quiz. If you're wondering, like, where am I in this whole perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause transition, go and take the quiz. And you're going to get some really cool tips about biohacking menopause after you fill out all those questions, which is really fun. It's not that many. I think there's only like 10, like super fast. Other things that's going on in the news is the Biohacking Menopause membership group. Come on in if you want to learn more about what I do. It's certainly an open book when we're there, because we have these live Q&As with me as well as guest experts as well who we meet every week. And I just drip feed you information on menopause and how to biohack some of those symptoms. And it's a wonderful support group too. So women are sharing what works for them. They ask questions. They share their own expertise too. So we'd love to have you there. I'll have links to that in the show notes. And what else is going on? So this is a bonus episode, which I usually post on Fridays. And in the probably about a week from this comes out, I'm going to the Health Optimization Summit in London to see my biohacking besties like Natalie Nidham and JJ Virgin's going, and all these cool people are going to be out there. If you want to go meet me there. Let me know. I don't have a code or sponsorship or anything from there. I'm just going because I love it. And it's the biggest event going on in Europe when it comes to health optimization or biohacking, right? Because a lot of people don't know what that word means. I'll find you a code. It'll be something like Nat 10 or Natalie Nidham. She's got stuff. Okay. And I've got a code for you. I'll put it in the show notes. And the other thing that you can attend if you're in Europe or in the UK is go to Oxford, because I am going to be going to the Aging Summit hosted by Oxford Longevity Project. And that's on June 28th. And I'm not only going to see some more besties there and learn some cool stuff about aging and longevity, but I'm also going to be giving the breathwork sessions there and using my breathwork instructor expertise and share how this can actually help us live a longer, happier life. right? Learning how to breathe. And I do that also in the Biohacking Menopause membership group, which you're also welcome to come to. So I'll have a code for that, the Aging Summit in Oxford. I think it's like 20 pounds off or 20% off. I can't remember exactly, but there's a code, probably Zora. Go to the show notes. Okay. I should have been better prepared for that. So let me introduce a little bit about myself, because if you're new here, you have no idea who I am. Maybe you just kind of found this episode somehow. It's the first time you're listening. And a lot of people who've been following for a while, maybe they don't really know a lot about my background and why I'm going to be in a sort of authority here on body composition. I hate the word weight loss, but okay, that's what a lot of people call it. But I'm from LA. I'm from Los Angeles originally. Yeah, born and raised. We're raised all over the world, but born in LA. And I always say it's like in my LA DNA to want to be healthy. And it's just when you live there, it's permeates the air. And so I had an interest ever since I was very, very young. And then I started really health coaching or guiding people through their health journey about 20 years ago. And of course, it starts out only with friends, and then you move on to clients. And then I learned about the biohacking world, and I was like, what is that? And that was all about prevention and longevity and aging. And I was really concerned about my own aging process because my mother passed away with breast cancer when she was only 57. So, yeah, I was like, okay, it's cool to look good in a bikini, but I don't want to die young in a bikini. I want to live a long, healthy life. And so when I started sharing information about this, it was just not sexy to talk about prevention. Like people don't want that. They want to focus on weight loss or fat loss and body composition and all that. So I learned some techniques to help people with that, but also as we went through the process, I got to drip feed them some information on longevity. So it's like, what are we going to do after you get the body you want, right? I had my own pretty cool transformation in about 2016 when I was getting a little fluffy. It was 46, and then I was like, why, I do quite a bit of exercise. I should be more, I don't know, muscular or fit, or I mean, I was pretty fit. I just didn't body didn't fit what I was doing. And I fixed that. And then I started Hack My Age, that website, right, in 2017. And that's where I got a little bit more professional. I got a certification with precision nutrition on sports nutrition, and that was really cool too. I did that in 2018, just about 6 years ago, and really cleared a lot of stuff that I knew already, but also learned some information that I didn't know. And for example, how to prepare people for like a bodybuilding contest or a magazine shoot, which, was so funny because they would say, reel it in. The body composition is for the shoot, but it's not sustainable and it's not healthy. And every chapter, they were like, you gotta bring them back to baseline. So just because someone looks fit in a magazine or bodybuilder, remind yourself that's not healthy. Okay. It's not sustainable. So over the years, then I started the podcast 2020, focused on biohacking for older women pretty much 50 plus, because I was 50 at the time. And then I slowly shifted into menopause because there was such demand for menopause and for hormones. And so the more and more guests I brought on, I don't not only talked about, just generally menopause, but more, older women, et cetera. I really started focusing more on the hormones and the menopause as the podcast grew. This is like 4 years ago now. And then, of course, during COVID, what do? You get a master's, right? Or stuck indoors. So I got a master's of gerontology, which is the study of aging and longevity, because there is no biohacking master's degree. It doesn't exist. And I wanted to know more. And it was really amazing. I graduated in 2022, just a couple of years ago, but it was very enlightening. And I'm glad I did that. It was really good for my brain and my brain health. And then I did the menopause method training with Dr. David Rosensweet, who's been treating women in menopause for over 30 years. And it's with the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine. I did that last year. And I'm constantly learning too and sharing on the podcast with our guests, as well as things that I learn in all the menopause societies that I'm a part of. And so I've been coaching women through menopause and perimenopause actually since the beginning, but I didn't even know. Uh, there were a lot of hormonal fluctuations going on. I knew what worked, but I didn't understand the hormonal shifts back then as I do now. So, what are we going to talk about this episode? I think it's going to be a long one, and and it's going to be a two-part series because it's too much information on body composition. It's not just diet and exercise. Okay. So I'm creating a big masterclass on this so we can get into the nitty-gritty details. But today, in this part one, we're just going to talk about nutrition. What do I eat? What do I do? What do I tell my clients? What reactions do they have, et cetera? And then in part two, we'll talk about the movement, the fitness, and all of the other pillars, which are super important to body composition. We're going to talk today about what happens when the body loses estrogen and what does that do to your muscles and metabolism and body composition. And I'm going to give you my personal hacks for maintaining my body composition even without or just minimal training. And I can explain to you why. And my next question is really, is it important to be concerned about the way we look? Well, to a certain degree, yes. It's okay to be vain. It's actually really good because it can motivate us to get healthier. But if you're happy as you are and you're maybe not an ideal body weight or body composition, like ignore all of this information. Just skip this episode and live your life. It's hard enough to be happy. If you're happy, just do what you're doing. You're doing great. So why are we focusing on body composition? Well, it's not here to bash anyone who's overweight. It's not to say that we should be skinny. That's not good either. My focus is on being strong and at an optimal body weight, not thin, not thick. Just be in a strong position, right? I'm a gerontologist, right? This is what we learn about aging and longevity. And what we know is obesity is the number one most modifiable risk factor for all age-related diseases. That means cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart attack, stroke, et cetera, that you've heard, right? The biggest risk factor for all of these diseases is age, but we can't modify that. That's why I say obesity is the number one modifiable risk factor. Okay. Smoking is another big one there too. But since 1975, worldwide, obesity has nearly tripled. This is according to the World Health Organization. Tripled. Okay. We're getting bigger and bigger. And when you're overweight, and that's just having excessive fat that gives us health problems, it's a similar thing. Okay. It's a similar story. It's hard to live a long, healthy life and health span when we are in an excessive fat. We need fat, right? Fat keeps us healthy, right? If we're too skinny, we're not going to live a long life, and it's not going to be very healthy. If we're too fat either, right? That's why we want to be optimal. Where's the optimal? And in the US alone, look at this. Almost half, well, close to half. This is 41.9% of the adult population is obese, not even overweight. I mean, that's a big problem, right? Because overweight people tend to die earlier, but more importantly, they're more restricted in life and they have a lower health span. Okay. We can live a long life. There's modern medicine is keeping us living long. It's those last 30 years that really suck because we're on medication and have pain and have issues, and it's not fun. So we want to extend our health span, the number of years that we live full of vitality and free of disease, or, less or fewer or less severe, right? We also know that women who are more overweight, they may have more severe menopause symptoms. So if you're struggling with menopause symptoms, it's a good thing to try to get in that ideal body weight. And of course, we have more strength, power, and muscle. I'm all about that. And what does that mean? You're more independent as you age, because what we know from older adults want to age in place. They want to live at home. They want to be in control. They don't want to be dependent on their family. And if you want to be independent, you got to be strong, and not only strong physically, financially, mentally, and emotionally as well. But I'm not going to get into that. But if you want to be able to carry your own groceries, if you want to be able to drive a car, if you want to be able to go up the stairs, if you want to, it's like we can't imagine what it's like to be 80 or 90 or 70. We don't know if you're in your 50s. You think but we really don't know. And so we don't want to wait until we get there and go, oh my gosh, I could have, should have, would have, right? We want to build strength, muscle, and power today. And you're just going to have much more fun along the way. And when we have a better body composition, we have more self-confidence, right? If you're strong, you feel better, right? And you will live longer and happier and better, unless you get hit by a bus, but that's another story. So, always wear your helmet when you ride a bike, right? So those are the reasons, some of the reasons. There's so many more reasons why it's important to be a little vain, to have a good body composition. Now, what's happening with menopause and the whole weight gain thing, that unexplained weight gain, or that middle menopause middle, or I hate all these words, it's just frightening, and it's so degrading, and it makes menopause have a bad rap. I think menopause, just people don't like that word. Got to rebrand it. We all, I think, hopefully know what menopause is. If you don't know, I've got a whole podcast on that. So I'll have the link to that episode in the show notes. But we have different stages. We have the perimenopause, we have the menopause, we have postmenopause, which are the very simple ones. We have other ones, but we're just going to talk about menopause. It's just a 1-day event. If that hasn't gotten ingrained in your head by now, now is the time. It's 12 months, 12 consecutive months without your period. So if you've had 6 months of your period comes back, well, you got to start the clock all over again. It's a really stupid number, and a lot of doctors will decide on how to treat you if you actually are in this date or not, whether or not you're suffering. I think it's really unfair, but whatever. It's a 1-day event. Everything before that is called perimenopause, or premenopause, but premenopause is just those childbearing years. Perimenopause is about, on average, 5 years before you hit that menopause date. Okay, on average, but it can be 10, it could be 7, it could be 8, it could be 1. It's different for everybody, but generally, on average, it's about 5 years. So menopause, that 1-day event, the average age in the Western world, more or less, is about 51. So it's about 46, mid-40s. You're going to start having some perimenopausal symptoms, but we know that we lose progesterone on average in our mid-30s. So you may not even be aware of all of these changes that are happening before your mid-40s, right? I just want to bring awareness for that. And then everything after that menopause date is called post-menopause. That means you have no more period, but yet your body is still changing. It's still reacting from the loss of hormones. And so even though you've stabilized, we tend to say, oh, I feel better. I'm not having these hormonal fluctuations and feeling all the typical menopause symptoms that we hear of, but your body is continuing to change, even though you don't feel it. So you know, look under the hood. So why do we gain some weight when we go through menopause? Well, it's the hormones, and it's usually due to estrogen. Estrogen helps regulate fat distribution in the body, and it promotes the fat storage in the hips and the thighs when we lose it, or if you have too much of it too. So when we lose our estrogen, there's just this tendency for fat to move from, I don't know, your thighs or your breasts, your wherever, to your middle area, your abdominal area. And then that can increase your visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat that's around your organs. That's the dangerous stuff. That's not superficial on the outside. That's where your liver, your heart, your lungs may not function well because they're covered in fat. And you can get one of these body composition scales. You can go test what is your visceral fat. And it's usually, there's a range, usually 0 to 9. And 9 is on the, if you're over 9, you got to really do something about it. But you want to be on the lower end. And when you have a higher visceral fat, and you'll know if you have visceral fat, usually if you have this, a bigger abdomen, and there's a way you can measure this, but there are skinny fat people too. When I was working in Hong Kong, I would measure so many people who looked like they have a pretty good body composition, but when you measured them on these scales, they had high visceral fat. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is dangerous. I don't care if you look good. You got to make sure you clear out that kidney and you clear out that liver. And so that increases your risk of metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease. You don't want to get a heart attack or a stroke or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. All these things are not good for the body and as we age. So That's important. What else happens when we go through menopause? Well, we're not sleeping well. Well, you can thank estrogen and progesterone going out the door for that. And we start to lose sleep. We're feeling stressed. So when that happens, well, we don't really feel like going to the gym or moving very much. And we don't feel like eating broccoli. We want caffeine and sugar, right? So these are all, that's sort of a secondary effect of the hormonal losses, but it's that estrogen. We tend to find it harder to increase our muscle mass as we lose estrogen because that has an anabolic effect on our muscle tissue. And when we lose it, it can it's called muscle protein synthesis, right? We lose the ability to build muscles, okay? And we tend to break down muscle faster too when estrogen is gone. So we love estrogen. Estrogen is our best friend, and we're so sad when she goes. And when we lose our muscle, what happens? We get more fat, and then we're not able to burn like we used to. So the more muscle we put on our body, the faster our metabolic rate is going, right? We can eat more, we can enjoy food better. We are just more metabolically healthy. And when we lose our estrogen, we become more insulin resistant. Okay. We meaning that we can't eat the foods like we used to. How many times have you heard a woman? I have heard plenty of times. I swear I haven't changed my diet. I haven't changed exercise. I'm like the same. And suddenly out of nowhere, this belly fat, like I don't understand. And and that's because estrogen is gone, right? And estrogen, yeah, just really helps regulate our body weight. It helps regulate the energy intake and energy expenditure, the food that we eat and how we create energy. And when we lose estrogen, it really disrupts this balance. And that's part of the reason why. And then on top of it, if you're feeling stressed all about this, well, cortisol goes up, cortisol high all the time. The cortisol loves belly fat. So we need to reel that in. And then there's like the emotional psychological effects of not having control of our body anymore. And that just can lead to some people feeling really, self-conscious, and just have low self-confidence, low self-worth, even depression. Okay. So we really want to make sure we're feeling really good in our bodies. So, what are the traditional approaches to managing menopause weight? What do you read online or what have you heard? Well, exercise more and eat less, right? That that just doesn't work. I'm sorry. Not when you get into this perimenopause transition. And some people say fasting, and not really. I mean, sometimes it depends. And we talk a little bit about that. And then there's all those diets out there, the keto, low carb, low fat, vegan, caloric restriction, whatever. I mean, it's so exhausting even just thinking about it. So maybe for some women, yeah, but it doesn't have to be that way. And and then maybe hear, oh, you got to eat a balanced diet, whatever that means, rich in nutrients. I would highly recommend you listen to Dr. Sarah Ballantyne's interview I did back in, I think it was in May. Yeah, May 14th, I think is when it was. And we did a great interview on nutrient dense foods. And she's just like the anti-diet person. I mean, she's just such a great episode. And then some people are trying to push fat burning supplements on you. Okay. So really be aware of those. Especially the ones on Facebook. Like they have those like 5 or 10 minute videos, and they reel you in with some pretty solid information at the beginning, and then boom, they just, I don't know, pseudoscience, and then tell you to buy this fat burning pill, and then they don't have what is in the ingredients. Not that fat burning pills are bad. It's just that these Facebook ads usually don't reveal the ingredients that are in there, and they're not a real company. It's just weird. So stay away from those Facebook ads. And then we'll talk a little bit more, okay, about cardio and HIIT training, discipline and willpower, so stuff that goes out. And I just, again, it's not about that. And then stress management techniques. Yes, those are also very important. We'll talk about in part 2. Don't smoke. That's kind of obvious. So these are the things that you may see on Google when you're searching for stuff, right? Or you've been listening to since the 80s, right? Like me. Now, let's talk about some of the biohacks that I do for a better body composition. So first of all, biohacking, if you don't know what that is, go and listen to the episode. I did a whole episode on this. You can see it on YouTube. You can listen to it on a podcast. And I talk about really the definition of what that is. And in a nutshell, it's health optimization, but it's all about self-experimentation, right? And you are the scientist and your body is a lab, right? And you got to figure out what works for you. And so I want to start with my own story and what do I do, because this whole podcast is supposed to be about me and my techniques, and then see if you want to try them out. Because a lot of people want to know, what do you do? What do you eat? How do you train and all that? So today we're just going to talk about the food. Okay. But it's not just the food, to be honest. But before I want to preface this, first of all, that I'm going to have a before and after explanation of what I'm doing, because my own personal journey with osteoarthritis plays a big role in this. Osteoarthritis is inflammation in the joints. It's not osteoporosis. It's inflammation of a bone joint. And this started about 8 years ago with a hip impingement, having a wonky, weirdo bone that doesn't slip in the socket, rub, and then just keeps getting inflamed. And I usually biohack my way out of it every couple of years, bounce back. I'm going to do a full episode on this in the next solo episode to explain a bit more. But basically, since June 2022, 2 years ago, I stopped all impact and strength training. I know it's bad. That's not good. You want to keep your impact and you want to keep your strength training. But when you have osteoarthritis, you're very limited. So I've been 2 years with significantly decreased in intensity of my exercise. I just do the rehab, the mobility, the walking, biking, yoga, and I'm going to get a little bit more into detail that later. But also since March 2023, I started using Katsu bands, which are blood flow restriction bands to help preserve some of the muscle mass. And I'll talk more about that on the next episode too. Now, since January 2024, that's this year, I decided to limit my steps to under 10,000, and I try to shoot for 5. I want to become more sedentary to stop the rubbing of the hips and try to lower that inflammation. I know it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but this is my own biohacking experiment. Okay. We'll see how long it lasts, because it's very, very hard for me to sit still. I do 10,000 steps without leaving the house. It's insane. I just move. I move a lot. And so basically I'm doing a fraction of what I used to do pre-2022. And I'm in perimenopause, but I have post-menopause hormone deficiency. Like when I test my hormones, they're all gone. Okay. But I have regular periods, right? And I've been on a baby dose of hormones since 2020, because I'm now 53. By the time this episode goes out, I'll be 54. And that's been a problem. Okay. That's probably part of the problem. They were too low dosages. So now I'm working on increasing the dosages. And then I'm going to make another solo episode just on my own personal hormone therapy journey. So let's talk a bit more about what I do. So first of all, again, everyone is different. What works for me may or may not work for you. That's what biohacking is all about, is to understand that no matter if there's science or research behind it, if you are not responding like the majority of the people in that experiment, it doesn't matter. The only person that matters in the room is you. So, I'm going to go a little deeper. Everything I tell you now, it's going to be quite bullet point, and I want to try to get to the point. If you want to know deeper as to the why this works or why we do some of these things, then join the Menopause masterclass on body composition. That's coming out soon. I'm working on that. But the first thing I always say when it comes to body composition, and again, it's try to avoid those words like weight loss and fat loss. That really shouldn't be your objective. I want you to get in the right mindset. Mindset is super important. It's everything. If you ever hear people in coaching, that's what I talk about. Okay. And you're like, no, just give me the goods. Tell me what to do and not to do. But the mindset is it. Even if we tell you what to do or not to do, which we don't, we ask questions, we give, options. You probably wouldn't follow through if you don't have the right mindset. So for me personally, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's my goal is not weight loss or fat loss. It's muscle strength and power. I want to age with muscle strength and power because I see what happens as we age. I see people in their 70s and 80s. Not everyone. Okay, this is a stereotype, but I've seen it. You've seen it happen. I'm sure you know somebody. And I don't want that. So that means I have to work on my muscle strength and power. But more importantly than this goal is, I know this is going to sound a little self-centered or egotistical, but I love my body. I really do. I'm fascinated by the human body and everything that it does. When like trillions of transactions are happening every second. If you study this, and it's mind blowing. How can your heart beat and how can you breathe without even thinking about it? Right? Even when you're asleep, your body is working for you. The immune system is fighting for your life without you have any clue what's really going on. You should go to some of those YouTube videos and see like the immune system, how it works and how those cells and macrophages eat up a virus or bacteria and spews it out and spits it out. It's just unbelievable. And this is happening in your body every second. Your body is really fighting for homeostasis and wants that balance and wants to survive. It's fighting for us. It's incredible. And the body and the mind, of course, they're working together and they do incredible things that we just don't appreciate. I'm almost intimidated by the power and the resilience of my body. It's unbelievable. Everyone's body, everyone has the capacity to do this. So I treat my body like a temple. I treat it with respect. I'm not perfect, okay? But I certainly try. It's the only home that I have that I get to live in. So I really, really do my best to pay attention to it. And I tell my clients sometimes, just treat yourself like a 5-year-old, right? Would you let your 5-year-old stay up all night on their phone and eat candy for dinner? No, not that you're eating candy or up in your phone, but you know what I'm talking about. You give your child a square meal, you tell them to eat the right time, you tell them to put the electronics down, you kick them outdoors, tell them to go play around. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. But if you don't have kids, just imagine yourself as a 5-year-old. What are you telling yourself? What thoughts are you putting in your head? Right? Would you tell those things if you're abusive to yourself and saying, I'm no good and my body sucks and it's not doing what I want to do and I'm so frustrated and I hate my thighs or I hate my belly or like, would you tell that to your 5-year-old self? No, you wouldn't. You would be kind, you would be patient. At least you should, right? So think about how your body is reacting to the thoughts in your head. And just remind yourself about that. And sometimes I tell my clients, just got to grow up, right? Put some greens on your plate. You don't like it, but you did it with your kids. Now you have to do it yourself. So yeah, those are just some of the mindset things. We really focus so much on the outside, the exterior of our bodies without realizing the importance of what's going on inside. And it all starts inside there. So please, number one, love yourself, love your body, take pride in what it can do, how far it took you, how month after month it was preparing for a baby through the menstrual cycle. I hope women these days just start to embrace their cycle and not hate having a period. When I interview women all around the world, when I say, what's the best thing about menopause? I would say like 90% of them saying, oh, no more period. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Try not to get frustrated with the body and what it cannot do. Support your body. It's literally fighting for you. It's fighting for your life. It's not against you. And the more you love it, the more you pay attention to it, the better it's going to work, right? So let's get superficial. Let's talk about body composition, the exterior. Okay. Like I know we're going to get on the hacks, the practical hacks. But remember, this is a 2-part series. And part 2 includes the whole movement portion and all the other pillars to optimal body composition that's worked for me and my clients. But we're going to move on to muscle strength and power. How do I do that? Because that's my objective. It doesn't have to be your objective. You can choose totally something else. There's no moral ground here. This is not superior. everyone has a personal journey. Maybe you have some different objective. And the more granular you get, the better. If you're now a grandma and you're like, hey, I've got this newborn in my life now, and I want to be able to pick it up and play or go surfing or skiing when they're a teenager, like maybe that's your motivation. I don't know, but you'd make that choice. But generally for me, what have I been doing the last 10, 15 years? Haven't done diets, but I certainly tried plenty of ways of eating. I hear about things and I go, oh, I want to do a little experiment. So usually I go for a couple of weeks and then I go, okay, whatever. I never really stick to something because I'm kind of, what I do kind of works for me. Right. But I had, um, an interesting transformation when I increased protein in my diet. That made a big difference. And that's something I don't even want to call it diet because I'm still eating that way in the last 10 years. So, pretty cool. Never had gut issues. So, knock on wood, somewhere so far, so good. So haven't had to be restrictive with some of the foods that I have. And I know that's not everybody. It's probably most people are not like that. I lower processed food. I thought even when I was quote unquote healthy in my sort of Jane Fonda days, I didn't realize, yeah, those Starbucks type muffins, there weren't any Starbucks back then, but I was eating, those Raisin Bran muffins thinking, oh, this is Raisin Bran full of sugar and frozen yogurt thinking I'm eating yogurt. Like, I thought I was healthy, wasn't, but now I know better. So I try to lower the processed food. I mean, and I'm talking about the highly processed food stuff. I'm not talking about almond milk that has, almonds and water and maybe salt in there. That's a processed food. Yes, it is. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the highly processed stuff that has a million and one ingredients and it's just garbly goop. You don't understand any words that are in there. What else do I do? I generally eat, I mean, the closest thing I can think about is like a paleo style diet, but I'm not strict whatsoever. I like to stick to a saying that really resonated with me that was created by Michael Pollan in his book. I can't even remember the name now. In defensive food, I think is what it was called. He's a journalist, like a medical journalist, talked a lot about nutritionism and stuff. He came up with the saying, eat real food, not too much, and mostly plants. And I kind of modify that a little bit. Yes, eat real food. What does that mean? Just stuff that doesn't come in a package, a box, a can, a plastic, a cellophane, and jar box. We that has a list of ingredients. Just the stuff that you'd get probably, like, imagine a farmer's market, okay, or a butcher or something like that. It doesn't have a label. And when he says don't eat too much, I add on, but enough. Okay. I see a lot of women going through this menopause transition, trying to exercise more and eat less. And that's just not working. Okay. That just increases your cortisol, lowers metabolic rate, and then you get frustrated. And the more you train, the bigger you get. So please eat enough. Okay. And I go into more detail this in the program. And yeah, mostly plants, but I definitely include proteins in there, especially animal proteins. This is the way I do it. Okay. Again, if you're vegan or vegetarian, do what you want. If it works for you, great. I'm just sharing what I do and what works for most of my clients. And I'm particularly adamant about eating organ meat, kidneys, heart, liver. Okay. Those are very nutrient dense foods. And you don't want to eat too much of those either. You just want to include them a little bit in your diet. I would say a couple times a month, I'm eating some kind of organ meat. No, probably three. I don't know. Depends where I am in the world, but maybe 2 or 3 times a month. And what else do I do? I do what I guess some people would call intuitive eating. Previously, my mantra was, if I'm hungry, I eat. And if I'm not hungry, I don't. Like, what's the big deal? Quite simple. But it's changed since I took this Menopause for Athletes course with Dr. Stacy Sims. Because if you're training intensively, which I was before 2022, it's really important to get protein in and enough food and enough calories in. Okay. I was on the whole David Sinclair track, like, oh, you can go train in a fasted state. Like, that's what I was doing because the research shows on men that brings you more years to your life. Okay. But we know better now. Women are different. So now, before I, not now, but when I was training intensively, I would have like a mini glass of protein shake with a banana probably mixed in there, either water or some kind of milk or milk alternative. And then I would, it's not that big because I don't want to be training even with tons of water in my belly. I like, I would take sips throughout the training, but I don't want to chug a bunch of stuff down. So yeah, like half a cup, maybe of half a cup, maybe a cup max of a little protein shake. Or sometimes I would have 2 tablespoons of cottage cheese, also mixed with mango or some kind of fruit, some kind of a carb protein blend. Um, and that was working really well for me. But for the last 2 years, I don't do that because unless I feel like it, but I just don't seem to um, train hard enough or to actually do it. And I have plenty of time after my training to make a big breakfast, which I really, really like. So when I train hard, I feel more hunger, right? I eat more. And now, because I'm not training as much, I eat less. Okay. But it's easy, I have to say, to slip into skipping meals. That's why I don't like fasting, because if you fast intentionally, you may find, well, you do, many people find it easier and easier, and you think, oh, the more the better. No, it's not. So really be careful with that. So I still stick to 3 meals a day. Sometimes it's two, but usually it's 2 meals and a more of a snack at dinner. But a funny thing that happens to me too is like when the sun goes down, like now, it's like 9 p.m. I can't believe it, 9 p.m. here in Spain. I don't feel so hungry, right? And that's just me intuitively again. So I really have to make sure if I want to get all my calories in, and for me, it's not calories in, it's more about I'm more concerned about calorie intake when I'm training hard, but for me, it's about getting the macronutrients in, the carbs, the fats, and the proteins. And I'm really always focused on the protein to get enough in there. And because I need it for so many things other than just muscle. I want to maintain my muscle mass, right? So I eat protein like it's my job. And it's literally like a job because you got to get in 3 times a day. At least for me, I try to get in 30 grams 3 times a day. I shoot for 100 grams because, in snacks or maybe somewhere you get in an extra 10 or 20 grams. So you can download a cookbook that I made and I show you how to do this. It's called Eating for Longevity. It's only $12.99, a no-brainer. And there's a whole meal planner, loads of explanation on longevity ingredients. And you have all the food that I eat, pretty much. I still eat to this day because I wrote that cookbook in 2017. I'll have a link to that in the show notes too. So there's another thing I do is I have an order for eating my food on my plate. Usually, not all the time, but I eat the protein and the vegetables first, and if there's a carb, I eat it last, unless it's all mixed up and like whatever. But generally, if I had, let's say, potatoes and broccoli and salmon, I would tend to eat the broccoli and the salmon first, because if I'm full and I just don't feel like it, then okay, I eat some of the potatoes and I leave the rest. Okay, I wouldn't want to do the reverse and go, oh, I got to force myself not to eat this fish. I'm just full and I don't want to leave it. So that's why I always eat protein and veg first. And the other thing I do is I never say never. I never say, oh, I'm never eat bread or I never eat sugar or never drink alcohol. I don't. I mean, I eat it all. I drink it all, but I usually don't feel like eating certain things like bread, rice, pasta, processed foods, pastries, pizzas, French fries. Like it doesn't call me so much, but if I feel like it, I eat it. It's just not so much on my radar anymore. Um, but there are times it is. So I just eat it, like whatever. There are times I feel like it. And for me, I know it's not what I do once in a while that makes an impact or counts. It's what I do every single day that counts. So other things I may do sometimes if I were to go in knowing I don't know, I feel like eating something that's maybe not working so well for me, or maybe I would offset the meal, but do this more teaching my clients. I don't need it so much anymore, but you can offset some of the quote unquote damage that's been done. Call it damage control with things like, pre-meals. You can time your apple cider vinegar. You can do pre-dinner walks or post-dinner walks. There's all these things you can do to offset this stuff, and we talk about that in those masterclass. Do I do dairy? Yeah, I do dairy, not a lot. Mostly goat yogurt or sheep yogurt, because I like yogurt, and cottage cheese I tend to do. But I have the ApoE4 gene. That's the Alzheimer's gene. And I have a bunch of other genes that, if you look at my gene profile, they're just genes that don't process saturated fats really well, right? So that's not necessarily good for me. And I've done my own experiment where, so what are saturated fats? Yolks, egg yolks, red meat with the fat on it, bacon, cheese, full fat dairy, butter, coconut products. So those things, when I remove them from my diet and I go test my lipid profile, like cholesterol levels and HDL, LDL, when I remove them, it goes down. When I put them back in, it goes up. I've done my own little experiment. So now I'm like, okay, well, I guess I should do not so much of that stuff. So I try to be a little bit more mindful of those things, but I eat plenty of fats coming from olives and olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocado. There's plenty of other fats that are great too. I eat fruit. Yeah, I do. I usually eat what's in season, and berries. They're never in season. I mean, when they're always in season in the summer, but I eat them all year round. I just can't resist. I love them too much. What I do tend to eat a lot too much of that I need to correct is I think I eat a lot of salt. I know I eat a lot of salt. And when you remove fat, you kind of lose the flavor. So you got to make up with the fats that you can eat, but it's also nice to have salt. And when you get used to salt, it's nice to have. And I'm working on just lowering it a bit, because before, when I was training a lot and I was summertime and I was sweating, well, I would add salt to my water. And when you get into this habit, it's hard to break even healthy habits. So because I'm not training as much and I'm not sweating as much, I'm hardly sweating at all, I have to lower that salt intake. So I'm working on that. Do I fast? I call it sleeping. So I fast 12 hours, between 12 and 14, pretty much. And it's not on purpose or intentionally. I just do it without thinking. It's like I get hungry around closer to 14 hours. When I'm training, when I could train before, I was definitely closer to 12, not going into the 14-hour fast. But now I'm a little bit closer to the 14. What about other things that I do? I like to go to sleep 2 to 3 hours after dinner. So I leave a big gap. I don't eat and then go to bed. But before, when I was training more as well, part of my training was doing all these post-prandial walks. That means after dinner walks. I love them. It's beautiful. I mean, I would love to be walking right now. It's 9 p.m., sun's going down, and I'm walking on the beach, and you feel good. You digest your food. But when I was doing that, especially when I was training, I would wake up in the middle of the night with like an adrenaline rush because I had low blood sugar levels. And I only found that out because I was using a continuous blood sugar monitor. And so I figured out I needed to have a little snack, like less than 100 calories kind of thing. Now, not eating a meal, just a little snack before I went to bed, and I was sleeping through the night, and then my blood sugar was much more regulated. And for me, it was lentils working best. Some people need protein, some people need fat, some people work better with carbs, a little bit of honey, a little bit of yogurt. Like everybody's a little bit different, but for me, it was the lentils. I mentioned to you before that generally now I'm eating a large breakfast, a large lunch, and a small dinner. Okay. When I'm training, I usually eat big breakfast, large lunch, and maybe medium dinner. Okay. But eating more like a proper dinner. And unless I go out, if I go out, okay, I always eat a nice dinner. And I do eat out a lot as a nomad. I'm a digital nomad. I have no home. I'm living in Airbnbs and hotels and friends. So I don't have as much control of my food. So I figured it all out. I'm a very curious eater. I'm not one of these. I've got a stomach of steel. I can eat bugs off of the street market type food. I love it. I love trying, experimenting. I'll try anything, but I know now how to hack all this stuff, and how to manage. And I actually have an article, a blog article. I should put that in the show notes too. The blog article that I wrote, and I wrote it for when I was living in Hong Kong because my clients there eat out all the time. Most people eat out in Hong Kong. They're fascinated when they meet somebody who knows how to cook. It's just like, you do that? How? So most people eat out. It's cheaper, easier, more economical because in Hong Kong, everybody lives in a Cracker Jack box and the kitchen is teeny tiny and it's just you got families living together in a very small space, so it can get very frustrating. So it's much more convenient to eat out, but it's a challenge when you eat out. So that's why I wrote the blog article on how to make the right food choices for your health. So I will include that blog article in the show notes too. What does my plate look like? If you ever follow me on Instagram, you know. It's basically, if you look at the plate, imagine a circle plate, 3/4 of it, vegetables, and that's including carbs, about a handful of carbs or so. I mean, carbs, meaning of course, vegetables are carbs, but I'm talking about the dry carbs in terms of quinoa or sweet potatoes or these kinds of things, or bread. Sometimes I have an avocado toast or something like that. So that would be about 3/4 of the vegetables, and then 1/4 of it is a protein. So usually animal, but sometimes I swap in for things like tempeh or tofu or edamame, lentils. I like those little lentil pasta things. That's a processed food, right? But it gives me such a jam-packed piece of protein when I'm tired of eating animals. Like, okay, I don't know, just don't want to eat animals today. So I go to switch to those little pastas. I think are really fun. Um, my breakfast is usually a stir fry, a vegetable stir fry. I just like cooked vegetables in the morning. That's just the way I am. And I have a protein there. So I would make an omelet. I got to do the egg whites, boring, boring, and non-fat cottage cheese, boring, boring. But maybe sometimes some tempeh will go in that stir fry or tofu or just leftover chicken or fish from the night before. I'm not a big fan of beef and lamb, and it's okay. I mean, it doesn't excite me so much, but also now knowing the saturated fat piece, I just try to limit that a little bit. So yeah, that's my breakfast. But I do also, so I usually also, I never stick with one thing. I do that maybe 3 times a week at least, maybe 3 or maybe 4. And then I like to make things like protein pancakes or protein waffles or protein crepes. And sometimes I feel like an oatmeal and I put in some protein powder in there and beef it up with some blueberries and things like that. So I try to rotate that things in and out as much as I can, not to do the same thing every day. Alcohol, I just don't like it. When I turned 50, I was like, that's it. I can now admit I don't like it. I tried really hard to like alcohol and be like everybody else, but I don't like it. So, but a couple of times a year, I do feel like a glass of wine or a cider, like if I'm in France, or beer in Germany, or I don't know, just like something comes over me and I'm like, I feel like it. So then I'll drink it. Usually it's just drink half of it or something. There must be something psychological, not just the alcohol or something. But anyways, I generally would prefer a blueberry chia seed smoothie rather than a glass of wine. That's just me. Okay. So, but I'm sure that's working in my favor, particularly during menopause, because we know in menopause, the body needs to detoxify estrogen, whether it's your own estrogen or whether it's a hormone therapy that you're taking. You need to get that detoxification system in there, not have a toxic estrogen sitting in your body. So when you drink alcohol, the estrogen has to take a back seat because alcohol is just like a bully, wants to come in, gets priority. The body needs to get rid of this toxic substance first. So it'll get rid of the alcohol first. And meanwhile, estrogen is circulating in your body in a toxic state. So, we don't want to be drinking too much alcohol during this menopause transition. Coffee. I like coffee, but I'm not anywhere near like these coffee aficionados. Okay. I like a cup after lunch generally, or sometimes in between breakfast and lunch. I'm a green tea person. I love waking up to a green tea in the morning and a glass of lemon water. Not cold. I like room temperature water or hot water. And now I'm doing more lemon, less water. And sometimes I add apple cider vinegar, but kind of that was like a phase I went through. But if somebody's looking at body composition, my clients, sometimes I tell them to do that and do their own experiment, see how that works. I do like coffee alternatives like matcha latte or chicory or hot cocoa, golden milk, chai. If I go to a cafe, they sometimes have beetroot latte. It's all pink and lovely. And I love mushroom drinks like chaga or reishi. Um, Coffee isn't my joy. And I know and I respect that. I think most of my clients are in that phase where it's not, I mean, coffee, sometimes they're dependent on it, but for many people that I've worked with, it's their joy. And I'm not going to take away their joy. How can I do that? It's just a matter of managing it and understanding the effects that coffee has on their body, depending on their goals and their needs. Sweets. Yeah, I usually eat fruit or 90 to 99% dark chocolate. I know it's really high, but I worked my way up there. Before I used to only be able to do like, I don't know, 70 or 80 when I was first getting into this. And then I would mix a 70 and 80, and then I would mix an 80 and a 90, and then I would mix the 90, 95. I would melt it. When I say mix, I mean melting it in a bain-marie, like you melt it somehow. And then I make my own bark. And so I still do this where I still make the bark and I just add toasted almonds or some kind of toasted nuts and some cranberry, like dried cranberries or raisins for sweetness, right? Because it is really bitter. But it's nice to have that sweetness coming from a dried fruit, which I prefer because there's a little bit of fiber in there. Again, I call it adult candy, dried fruit. Just I used to be one of these people who'd eat like 6 dates. I'm like, these are really good. I'm realizing maybe the 6 dates were not so good to do them all at once. So I usually melt that, put it all together. I'm really into adding a peppermint oil, essential oil in there, and it's so nice. I'm like totally into the dark chocolate right now. So that's really fun. And I would tend to make my own treats, like a homemade banana bread or something like that. I've got loads of recipes in the cookbook. And but I see myself going in waves. Like when I was training pretty hard when I was living in Hong Kong, I was always carrying a protein bar with me. And I was very diligent about which ones because like 90% of them are garbage. So I would take the ones what was that brand? Oh gosh, I can't remember it, but it was such a good brand. It was pretty much egg whites and um, dates and nuts, like very simple. And it's not like the most tasty bar, but I knew it's like, oh, I got a little bit of sweetness and I've got something that's on the go. Because I was in a rush mode in Hong Kong. And if you're like that, it's nice to have those things. But um, for me right now, I'm not in that phase of life, and I pretty much stick to fruit and dark chocolate or some homemade thing. And I practice mindful eating. Mindful eating is like not bringing your phone in your food. I would take a photo, but then I put my food down because I know that later on I'm going to post and share. But it's about smelling the food, looking at the food, feeling the food. I teach my clients this as well as in the Biohacking Menopause membership group. If you want to learn about mindful eating, it affects the digestion. I won't go into why, but not until you can go to the masterclass for that. But it's important. And then as a biohacker, we love to use devices, right? And I think one of the best devices out there to see how your body reacts to food and exercise and stress and all the other things is a continuous glucose monitor. So those little, quarter-sized bits, that white circle things that people put on their arms. It's usually for diabetics, but biohackers love watching what the food does to their body, and you learn so much. It's a 2-week experiment. I think it's really cool, really worth doing. I wish I had a code for you. I don't. But we would usually use the Freestyle Libre. If you, there's other things, I mean, that's sometimes it's complicated to use those because you may not understand. Then you want to go to something, a company called Levels. There's a couple other ones out there that other podcasters promote because they're sponsors of the show. I should get them on, gosh. And you can get discount codes and stuff. If you need help finding one, I'll help you find one. I've got podcast friends who've got these codes and I can grab one for you. The other device that I like to see data in is called an Aura ring, OURA, and that's this ring here. And I always talk about it because it's like a little computer in here. I don't know if you could see, it's like it measures my body temperature, it measures my heart rate, measures my heart rate variability, it measures my sleep, it tells me how I'm reacting to stress, if I'm in a calm state, if I'm stressed out. And it's like a little mom there. It reminds you, hey, you got to chill out, or hey, get your butt off the couch and go do something. I love these little trackers because it gives you some insight into how your body is responding. One experiment people love doing with the Aura ring is how alcohol or caffeine affects their sleep. And you can do plenty of experiments with that. The Lumen is another interesting device you can use. I should have had mine. I got one. It's like you blow into it and it tells you if you're burning carbs or fats. And it's not a keto thing. It's to tell you when you're burning carbs, when you're burning fats, and just get you into this metabolic flexibility. I did a podcast on that. I should share that also in the show notes. And I have a discount code. It's probably Zora, but I'll put that in the show notes. And the same thing for the Aura. Aura, they links that they give people who are owners of the Aura ring. They give you links to discount codes. I think it's maybe $50 or 50 euros, but let me know if you need one. I can find one. If not, if you've got a friend who has an Aura ring, ask them, they can get it in their little app and get it for you. And I've never done the whole keto device thing. It's just, I never really liked keto for myself or my clients. And so I never really went down that path. But in the podcast that I did on the Lumen, and we also talked about the keto devices with Natalie Nidham. I almost called her Dr. Natalie Nidham. Maybe that's premonition. So yeah, she's like a doctor. She knows so many things, but she gave a great review on the devices that she was using. So if you're interested in those things, go check that out. Another device that I use, it's an app, is the Chronometer. It's called Chronometer. It's not CHRO, it's CRO Chronometer. And it's a way I keep track of my macros to make sure I've got enough proteins. And what I do is generally, it's no matter what, if I'm in a trained phase of my life or untrained phase of my life, I'm looking for balance. I know for me, what works best is when I have proteins, fats, and carbs all in balance, like just generally about the same, like 30%, 30%, 30%, more or less. And that works really well for me. And it does work really well for my clients because we need carbs to make hormones. We need fats for our brain. We need, we need everything. We need them all. I'm not a fan of like no carb or no fat. It's just it's more about food quality and what's working for you and stuff like that. Other things for that people talk about in terms of body composition are supplements or drugs like metformin. So maybe you're talking about berberine, inositol, the metformin there, EGCG, which is a green tea extract, and I don't do the supplements, but I do have the EGCG, the green tea extract. It's I think it's epicalocatechins that's an extract that's in green tea that is used in fat burning supplements, but I use it for inflammation. It's like an anti-inflammatory. I drink green tea, so I do get EGCG in my diet. And but people can buy those supplements you want. There's also gut supplements if you have gut issues like digestive enzymes. And then you can do the whole apple cider vinegar hack. There's all these little hacks. I don't do them myself, but they do work well for some of my clients. And then there's a whole peptide conversation, but that's not so much a nutritional thing. I'll talk about that in the next episode, weight loss peptides. And I probably should do a supplement episode. So those are the things I do nutritionally. I mean, it's not everything, but I think I gave you quite a list of things that I do myself. And if you have questions, you send me a message. Uh, the next episode, we're going to talk about how I move before and how I move now, and what biohacks I use to hack exercise mimetics when you cannot. And I have been able to maintain my muscle mass exactly, if not better, than when I was in a completely trained state, which is insane, insane. So you're getting all of the details right now. Nutrition is part of it. And then the next episode will be all the rest. And of course, we're going to talk about the sleep and the stress. And then we're going to talk about biohacks that are foundational that no one ever talks about. So that's it, guys. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. There's like a little plus button or there's a little arrow, and go tick that and leave your reviews. Please, 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 please. If you like this episode, leave a review, share it with your friends or people who you think would be interested in listening to it. Give me your love, your feedback, your questions on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube, or the website. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Even if you disagree with me, I want to hear it. Like, I learn from you too. So please, let me know your thoughts. Any kind of feedback is good feedback. And join the Biohacking Menopause membership group. Because you're going to learn a whole lot more there. You're going to learn a lot of nitty-gritty details, and look out for the Biohacking Body Composition online masterclass, where I will explain all of these in much greater detail with images and a lot of other tools and worksheets and stuff like that that you can use. So thank you very much for getting this far. I know it was really long. Now you can see why I just wanted to make this a part 1 and get a part 2 to you next time. So have a wonderful day. Good night, good morning, wherever you are, and I will see you next time.